What's up? What's up? Welcome in to No Free Squares, your Week 7 DFS preview show. We have a really fun slate. I was kind of surprised. I went in last night. I'd gotten a couple projects done. I may have popped a little bit of green in there. And I decided, all right, let's sit down and see what this slate is speaking to me. What is it saying to me? And shockingly, despite the fact that we're in a bipocalypse, I think this is a fantastic slate. I went through, I'm looking at the obvious games, Kansas City, Tennessee, Baltimore, Cincinnati, Vegas, Philly, those obvious high total games with these mobile quarterbacks. These look fun. You keep going down the list. I could play Carolina this week. I could play Miami, Atlanta this week. There's all of these different options. Then you get into Kyler's in a smash spot. Aaron Rodgers is going up against the football team. It's a little bit questionable to the extent which they play football. You get Matthew Stafford in a revenge game. Truly, truly a very fun slate to break it down, and I'm excited to do so with all of you. I wanted to speak really quickly. I will not waste too much of your time on this, but I wanted to speak really quickly to one more serious matter before I get into all the DFS fun. Just since I have this platform to do it. The Deshaun Watson rumors going around all of this week, of course, are of a lot of intrigue to the fantasy community and to the football community in general. I put out a tweet and it's pinned at the top if anyone wants to check that out. Just a lot of my thoughts on the situation, specifically my thoughts on how we react to that as a fantasy community. The issues that are alleged, and by no means am I pronouncing him guilty. I've the full respect for the judicial process, and I expect that to play out. But obviously what is being alleged is extremely serious. It's extremely troubling. And there are a lot of folks, myself included, that are in this space that are survivors of sexual violence. And it is really, really difficult to see someone have those types of serious crimes alleged. And we discuss that as sort of a speculative asset. I just want people to be conscious when they're speaking about Watson, about what's going on, about the human impact of that, and to really put that first and foremost, despite how important it is from a fantasy lens. So I wanted to get that out of the way, just something that I think is important. And now let's talk about some DFS fun. When we come back, we are going to take our drive down Narrative Street, and we're going to talk about all of the big, sexy plays that everybody's going to be jamming in this week. I'm excited to do that. I'll be back in just a second. All right, welcome back into Narrative Street. And before we get into that, let's answer a couple questions. Quick reminder, if you are tuning in to this live, if you're tuning in on Twitter, I cannot see your comments directly through Twitter based on the way that they've done things. So what you can do is just comment below in the tweet, and we'll make sure to find it, either myself or Tom, who's working diligently in the back. We will find whatever you reply in the comment to my tweet. We'll make sure to answer that on the show. Or you hop on over to YouTube, as Andrew John did. You can find us over at the Full Tilt Dynasty YouTube network and the Dynasty Vipers YouTube network. Leave your comment on here. I will answer it directly. Capiche? Capiche. So Andrew asks, exciting slate this week, stuck in a pinch between Brian Edwards, Nico Collins, Quez Watkins, and Tyler Johnson. Need to start two of my flex spots. Oh yeah, okay. Not a DFS question, but that is fine. We'll definitely answer that. That is a pinch. I would start Brian Edwards and Quez Watkins. However, with that Raiders game, everything feels like it'll be funneled to Jacobs, Waller, and Sanders, Goddard. Thoughts on those options? Yeah, I'm still sticking with both of the options in that game. Just feel more comfortable with the routes and the targets. Can't wait to hear the breakdown. Absolutely glad to have you with us, Andrew. Feel free to keep the questions coming. And Matt supporting my green endeavors of lineup creation on Friday, or he really wants to play Bobby Trees. One of the two. I'm not sure which. All right. Let's take our drive here down Narrative Street. We're going to talk about the most popular plays of the week. And specifically, I put out a tweet on Twitter. I put out a thread on Twitter today, sort of substituting for my weekly article. And I talked through how you can look at a slate, diagnose, what are going to be the most popular, and then start to build these lineups, and actually just build these lineups under the assumption of just doing what you think is going to be most popular. You'll find what keeps popping into your lineups, what keeps staying out of your lineups. And obviously what comes out at the top is 247 pounds of perfect humanity. It's the big dog, in this smash spot against the Chiefs that are by far the worst run defense in the NFL right now. And you get this unstoppable force meeting a very movable object, and he's only 9,200. I mean, I say only, but that's not prohibitive, right? Like, this is not a $10,000 player. You can get Derrick Henry into your lineups without too much trouble. I think people are going to be very, very excited to jam the big dog this week. And that whole game is a blast. And that whole game is reasonably priced. You can spend down for Ryan Tannehill quite easily. Mahomes obviously gets more expensive. But I put out a lineup on Twitter today, showing Mahomes, Henry, Tyreek Hill. How do you feel around that? It's not that hard. It's actually quite doable. And that leads into the second big thing with this week is all of these injuries have created a lot of value. This is the first time that I recall really viable 3K type wide receivers, this many of them since week 1. Like, remember week 1, everybody was playing Elijah Moore and Marquez Callaway and Jalen Waddle, Rondale Moore, Terrace Marshall, all of these rookies and guys, they were all 3,000 or 3,400. And we thought, okay, well, these guys probably going to get 6-7 targets at this low price. Kind of similar this week. You got Bateman, who came back. He had 6 targets last week. In his first week back from injury, he's only 3,400. You get De'Ami Brown, I believe, had 6 targets last week. He's only 3,600. There's still no Cam Sims, still no Logan Thomas. Antonio Gibson is banged up in that offense. You keep going down the list. Shi Smith, I mean, they're down in Carolina. They're down no Terrace Marshall, no Brandon Zylstra. They're down to only 3 active wide receivers on the roster, one of whom is the rookie Shi Smith. He's almost certainly going to get a lot of snaps this week. And of course, the god, Dante Pettis. Dante Pettis had 11 targets last week. He's certainly going to be getting a lot of targets, or at least the opportunity for a lot of targets in that game against Carolina. So there's all these really cheap options. And then you think, okay, well, if everybody wants to play Henry, if everyone wants to play these cheap options, those are things that go together. And that means what you're going to see people not want to do is pay up for those top wide receivers. And this gets exacerbated further because the mid-range at wide receiver this week, this is the last thing that really stuck out to me, is the mid-range at wide receiver is just loaded up with, frankly, just wrong prices. DraftKings usually does a fantastic job of their pricing. I feel like they just straight up didn't this week on the mid-range. Calvin Ridley at 6,600 is an absolute jam. His usage this year has been still elite. It's been on par with how people drafted him as his top 5 wide receiver. He's 3rd in expected fantasy points. All of a sudden, now you get him at 6,600 against a very injured and underwhelming Miami defense. That's a massive cash game value. Go down to A.J. Brown. He's in this game. Everybody wants to play. Highest over-under on the slate. I think it's close to the highest over-under we've had on a game yet this season. Kansas City, Tennessee. And A.J. Brown sitting there at $6,300. It seems like he's going to make it back from Chipotle Gate in order to play in this game. And he had over 30% target share on Monday night, looks reestablished as that wide receiver 1 for that team. And then you're able to get down to Chris Godwin, no Antonio Brown. Chris Godwin at 5,900 looks like an absolute jam. And the guy that I think is really priced, I don't know if everybody else is going to play him, I actually think he's going to go under the radar, is Hollywood Brown, who's also down there at, I believe, 5,800. And his role has been phenomenal all year long. He's frankly been mispriced all year long. So what I see immediately is you see those 3 guys at the top, Devonte Adams, Tyreek Hill, and Cooper Kupp, and especially Adams and Kupp, because they're in these games with these much larger spreads. They're less sexy than the Kansas City, Tennessee game. I'm looking at those. I'm thinking, man, are that many people going to play them? Like, first you have to decide to play a really expensive wide receiver, and people won't want to for all the reasons I discussed. All these value wide receivers wanting to play Henry, wanting to pay Mahomes or Kyler Murray or Lamar, right? And then you get all these mid-range wide receivers. Like, my cash lineup this week, I'm not having any of those guys. I'm not. So I think it's really interesting, and opportunities to get in on Adams and Comet. I'm not saying they won't be owned. Like, I'm sure they'll be 10% at least, but I'm not 100% sure that we're going to be seeing like 20% ownership of these guys. And to me, that is very exciting. So how do we build off of this? What I'm going to do when we come back is I'm going to just build a lineup. We're going to do this kind of interactively. So feel free to suggest names if anybody wants to go in on DraftKings. But I'm just going to sort of build through each of these assumptions, we're going to see what pops up. We're going to see what doesn't. And it's going to kind of mirror a lot of what I talked about on Twitter this morning. And Spencer, thank you. I love you too. That's like the most beautiful thing I can possibly hear, honestly. Actually, just while we're here, I just want to shout out everybody that I've interacted with this week. It's been incredible. People have responded to what I was writing about Watson in a really, really beautiful way. That I really, really appreciated. I had like multiple people just reach out to me last night. They're like, hey man, I'm super sorry the Red Sox lost. Like, hope you're doing all right. And like, yeah, trust me, like I'm going to be okay. My baseball team loses. I can get through that level of adversity, but that's like the sweetest thing in the world. It's so nice, the community that we have on here. So thank you everybody. And we'll be right back. We're going to do a little bit of lineup building here on DraftKings when we return. All right. All right, here we go. We have the beautiful, never heard from before site that I like to call DraftKings.com. And basically, what we're going to do is we're going to sort of build through a few different ideas of what people are going to build. And if you want specific things that you want to see, like if you have a concept that you want to see, feel free to fire it in the chat. But I'm just going to do at least a few here just to sort of show you this process. When I'm going through and I'm building lineups, this is what I do first. I don't think necessarily about what I want to play. I try to just put myself in the mindset of like a reasonable builder, right? I'm not trying to do crazy things. I'm not trying to do crazy plays, but one who's probably not thinking levels ahead about leverage and about ownership. I'm just trying to build essentially good lineups that are correlated, the people playing tournaments, but that are kind of like correlated cash lineups, basically. So let's say I go in and I'm just a big fan of the big dog. I want to do Henry, and I want to make sure to stack this Kansas City, Tennessee game, okay? So I'm going to lock in Mahomes, Henry, and I'm going to do Tyreek Hill. I use Hill in my examples on Twitter today. I could easily use Kelsey. It's kind of the same thing. If I do Hill, I'm going to play a cheap tight end. If I play Kelsey, I'm going to play a cheap wide receiver. It's really the same structure, right? So now I'm stuck in this, okay, Mahomes, Henry, Hill. I know I have to play a cheap tight end in this lineup and a cheap defense because how am I going to afford all these guys, right? So I'm just going to scroll down. I'm going to pick Ricky Seals-Jones. You can pick someone else. He's one of the highest projected, right? I'm just trying to gauge the structure. I'm going to go down. I'm going to pick a cheap defense so that I can afford Henry and Hill and Mahomes. And then I'm just going to see what I have left, right? I'm going to see what I have left, and I'm going to build from there. In this case, I happen to know one of the routes that fits if I plug in Miles Sanders and I plug in Dante Pettis as a really, really cheap option. And then, I'm going to bring that back with, not with Anderson. I'm going to do this with Mooney. And I believe, do I have enough for Godwin? I don't. I might have, this is the one I did with Ian Thomas. That's why. Ian Thomas. Yeah, so you can see this lineup here, right? I'm going to be cheap, really, really cheap at least two positions. Is basically what I have to do. If I want to play Mahomes, Henry, Hill, I have to get really cheap in two spots. Maybe I get a little less cheap if I wanted to, right? Like maybe I don't want to pay $1,500 for Godwin. I could go down, pay in the 5,000 range, and I could play Ricky Seals-Jones instead of Ian Thomas. But either way, I have to probably get sub 4K in two spots. Okay. And you have to think about it. Like if people have to do this, if this is a popular strategy you want to do, that's going to lead to more ownership on the Pettis types, on the Ian Thomas types, right? And I can still get the Godwin because he's just way underpriced. And maybe I could do, maybe I could get up to like Ridley if I'm willing to play 3 sub 4K people. But this lineup is going to block people out of that mid-range wide receiver range, okay? That's something to note. So when I say something to note, you have to think about how do I actionalize that, right? So something I can be pretty certain of is that, if people are playing Henry and Hill, they're probably not going to be able to play very much this Ridley, AJ Brown, Marquise Brown, Chris Godwin tier. They're not going to play maybe just one person from that tier, right? And so I can think about it and say, okay, I'm going to use that to pivot off of other guys, right? Yeah, exactly, Spencer. Yeah, Godwin without AB feels chalky. Yes, I expect that he'll probably be the highest owned wide receiver on the slate. He's just underpriced, right? Like $1,500 on Godwin is a really good value generally, I think. His role has not been that bad. Like he's definitely worth $1,500 anyway. And now without AB, I mean, he's a snatch. He should be a $7,000 wide receiver, and he's a full $1,000 underpriced. So he's going to be probably 25% rostered. And we'll talk about how to pivot off of Godwin actually quite a bit. Right. Now let's go in. Let's do something else. All right. I still want to play this game. I don't need to play Derrick Henry, though. So I don't want to have this gross lineup. I don't want to play Pettis. I don't want to play Ian Thomas. So let me just play A.J. Brown now instead in this stack here. All right. I'm going to play A.J. Brown with my Tyreek Hill stack. All the rest of this looks pretty good. But now I'm going to play Ricky Seals-Jones in this slot because I have a little bit of extra cash to work with. And I'm going to let's get Godwin out of here because now I've got AJ Brown up in that range. I'm not playing Henry, so let's play the other chalk running back on the slate, right? Like everybody and their dog is going to want to play Darrell Henderson this week, of course, because he's up against the Lions and he's been an absolute workhorse, and so they should want to play that. All right, what do I have money left for? Perfect. I have money left to fit in Mecole Hardman, and that fits right into my stack. So now I get to do a little double stack action, Mahomes and Hardman and Hill. You get to go A.J. Brown, something like this, right? Maybe I spend down for Mooney somewhere else. I can spend up for Miles Sanders, but you see the point, right? We're getting, actually, Spencer, I don't know if you read my Twitter, but when I did this lineup on Twitter, I actually put in Fournette where Miles Sanders was, and then I went down to Rashad Bateman, actually, where Darnell Mooney was. That's exactly what I did, right? But you get to see this lineup, right? You get to see now, okay, these are all these different pivot points. You see the players that keep popping up, right? People like Mooney keep becoming attractive. Miles Sanders continually becomes attractive because these are ways to save cash. And then let's look at one other option, right? Now, let's say I don't really care. Maybe I'm a different process player now. I'm not going to be as concerned with game stacking all that much. I'm going to just lock in these two running backs. I'm going to look through. I'm going to see, oh man, Darrell Henderson, I got to play him, 6,600. Derrick Henry, I've got to play him. Okay. And then I'm going to play Chris Godwin because you said he's going to be really chalky, and he absolutely will be. All right, if I'm playing Godwin, I'm going to play Mooney with him. And then, all right, let's see what salary I've got left here. I'm going to go down. I'm going to play a cheaper quarterback so that I can afford a Henderson and my Henry. Right. So let's do something like Matt Ryan. And you can do this with a different game, but this is an example, right? Calvin Ridley, already mentioned, super popular. Then we're going to plug in Mike Gesicki. And all of a sudden, now I've got Derrick Henry. How am I going to correlate that? Perfect. I'll bring it back with Hardman. And this is pretty much a correlated version of what my cash lineup is, honestly, this week. But you can see now you get all of this mid-range consolidation. Here is how people are going to get, into playing Henry and Henderson and these mid-range wide receivers is you spend down. You go to the Matt Ryan. You go to the Tua Tagovailoa. You go to the Derek Carr, right? You're going to see a lot of these lineups pop up, maybe even Sam Darnold. So the biggest question is, what are you not seeing? And actually, I'll answer this. Do I like Amon-Ra St. Brown? Kind of. Yeah, I'm into it. I'm not going to play a lot of him. My issue with Amon-Ra is that his depth of target is ass. Like he basically just gets targeted 5 yards away from the line of scrimmage. The Lions have a really, really low implied team total. And so the chances that Amon-Ra gets to the 100-yard bonus, I would say, are very slim. He probably needs to catch 9 or 10 balls, and that's just not something he's demonstrated. And the chances that he scores a touchdown are also very slim because they're not going to score a lot of touchdowns. They're only projected to score 2 in this game. So I think Amon-Ra is fine. I think he can get you, I think he has a pretty decent chance of 3xing his value, right? So from a cash game perspective, like he's fine. 4,100, I think he can get you 12 points, maybe 50, 60% of the time. Tournaments, I struggle to see the upside. So I think it's not a terrible idea to play like Henderson with Amon-Ra, but I'd probably rather play Hardman for like $200 more. I think the chances that Hardman gives me 100 yards and a touchdown are significantly higher than Amon-Ra, even if I prefer Amon-Ra in cash. Jameis or Fields this week. So first off, from a DFS perspective, I mean, obviously Monday games off the main slate, and I think Fields just doesn't pass, but I could be taught. In terms of in season long is what I'm assuming this is for. Fields, I think, is probably the better option. He ran the ball a little bit more last week, had over 40 yards. I would rather play Fields, but both of these are definitely tough options. All right, so let's talk about quickly, what am I not seeing in any of these lineups, right? We haven't gotten Cooper Kupp into these lineups. We haven't gotten Devonte Adams into these lineups. And I'm not saying that can't happen. It's just when you start with these obvious plays, right? These obvious constructions. I want to play these value wide receivers. I want to play Henry and Henderson. I want to play KC, Tennessee. And then you just build organically. It's hard. You have to reverse engineer the process to get to these other guys. And so that's how you sort of look at arbitrage, where it's not about picking these low owned scrubs sometimes that are like 2% owned because they suck as plays, right? A lot of people think, oh man, how am I going to get unique? Well, I've got to play this really shitty player at $3,500 because no one will be playing him. Like, yeah, that'll get you unique, but it's not good. And it doesn't even get you that unique. Like I hate when people try to get unique through price leverage, right? They'll look at something and be like, oh man, well, everybody's playing, or a lot of people are going to play Rashad Bateman this week because, he's really cheap down there at $3,400. But what if I play Deshaun Jackson? It's like, okay, well, good luck playing Deshaun Jackson at the same price. But now all you're doing is writing the same lineup as other people with a way worse play instead of Rashad Bateman. You're not accomplishing anything. It's the same thing even at a not terrible play range, right? Like if you're just doing the exact same lineup as everybody else, but you're subbing in Mixon for Henderson, like, okay, right? That's some element of leverage-ish, right? Now you're playing like maybe a 15% owned guy instead of like a 30% owned guy. So that's nice. But at the same time, Henderson's more owned than Mixon because he's probably going to score more points than Mixon. And now you're tying your hopes of success to a 1v1 that you're going to lose most of the time, right? It's just, to me, there's more effective ways to do it. And one of the more effective ways to get totally off this build is if I go, okay, I'm gonna do sort of a similar idea to what the Mahomes, AJ Brown, Tyreek Hill stack would be, right? That's very, very popular. But I'm going to play a different game. I'm going to play Devonte Adams in an absolute smash matchup against a football team, and I'll play Aaron Rodgers. And then I'm going to bring it back with Terry McLaurin, right? This is a really fun stack because you get this great projected wide receiver in Adams, projected just as well as Hill, right? Is Rodgers projected as well as Mahomes? No, but he's also cheaper. You get to save a little bit of money. And now I can spend up on McLaurin, who's in a great spot against an injured Green Bay secondary, probably a negative game script. And I think he's going to be like super, super unique this week. Because we already mentioned, right? Look at all those wide receivers that are cheaper than him that project as well or better. Ridley, Godwin, AJ Brown, Mike Evans, all these options, right? Now what can I do? Now I can fill this out. I already have this unique start. So now I can play Henderson. I don't have to worry about the ownership on Henderson, right? Okay, now I'm going to do, I'll play someone cheaper. I'll play Bateman. And let's see, what can I afford? Let's lock in a placeholder defense here. Right. Let's say I'm going to play, I don't know, I'll play, I'm leveraging off of Seals Jones with that McLaurin thing anyway. So let's say I play like Ingram in the same range, and I'll play Chuba Hubbard to pair with Ingram. And what kind of money do I have left? $4,700 I have left. What can I do with $4,700? Here we go. I'll just plug in Mooney for now, right? And you can toy with it, right? You can toy with this back and forth as long as you wish. But now you have a lineup that's kind of the same idea. But now I can pretty much just plug in whatever plays I want to frickin' plug in. I could play Seals Jones in this lineup too, and I could just go double. I don't have to leverage off Seals Jones. I could just double stack that side of it too, right? But now I don't even have to worry about ownership at all, right? At all. I think what I'd probably do here, I would switch Hubbard to Swift, pair that with Henderson, and then I could move Mooney up to Robbie Anderson, pair that with Evan Ingram. It's pretty much chalk, 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 but I started with a little bit slightly different with the Adams, McLaurin, Rodgers versus the Hill, Mahomes, Brown. That makes sense. All right. When we come back, I'm going to get into specifically my plays of the week. I'm going to talk about a lot of the same guys that I just talked about, but I really wanted to go through that at a process level. So I'm going to talk about a couple of additional guys, why I'm super into them this week. Then we'll move along into the sneaky athlete and into, of course, the game that is not sleeping the nation, GPP Roulette. I'll be back in just a second. All right, here we go. The plays of the week. I've talked already about Chris Godwin, why everybody's going to be on Chris Godwin. Everybody's going to be on Chris Godwin. Here are two of the plays of the week. Number one is, of course, Leonard Fournette. Leonard Fournette at $6,400 provides great leverage off of Godwin, right? He gets to steal touchdowns from Chris Godwin, and he's in that same price range as Darrell Henderson, who's going to be really popular, Joe Mixon, who's going to be really popular. So you get a little bit of a lower owned play, gets to be the leverage play into Fournette. And then the guy I like even more than Fournette is Mike Evans. I mean, Mike Evans, I think, has the opportunity to be a bit of a forgotten man. He gets the same boost that Godwin gets via there being no AB. But for whatever reason, people sort of, I think, are more inclined to hit Godwin when AB came in unnecessarily, and then are more inclined to support Godwin with AB being out unnecessarily, just because they see sort of shorter guy, they look more similar. They play, I think, more similar. At least people think that they do. Like Antonio Brown actually has a very high ADOT this year. He gets a lot of deep opportunities. He's probably taking those more from Mike Evans than he is from Chris Godwin. I think Mike Evans is also in a great spot. He just happens to be higher priced at $6,500 than Chris Godwin at $5,900. It is not that hard to get, $600 to go and play Mike Evans at what I think might be like half the ownership. I'm just jamming the crap out of Mike Evans this week, unless I wake up Sunday morning and I find out that, oh no, he's actually going to be like 20% owned. If I think it's going to be between 10 and 15% on Evans, probably max. I think it'll be 20 to 25 on Godwin. Give me Evans in that scenario every single time. Another guy I really like this week, painful to say it, you can see the Chiron below. It says avoid take lock in your lineups. I'm actually quite into Josh Jacobs this week. He's in a really interesting spot against Philly. High over-under game. Kenyon Drake got those touchdowns, but his role did not increase with the new coaching staff at all. He played like 11 snaps. Jacobs is still getting a ton of long down and distance work. He's getting all the carries. He's now starting to get receptions. He's going up against one of the worst run defenses in the league. A lot of people are going to Sanders because he's so cheap, and I'm into Sanders too this week. You get the coach speak narrative, of course. People want to jump on the coach speak narrative. Why not play, Jacobs Smith instead of Sanders at Ruggs, right? Like it projects better. It projects a lot better. It's just a little bit more expensive. And then you just save money, a little bit elsewhere, right? I think that is a really, really fun play. And my other favorite play this week is Devonte Adams. I already mentioned him. People are going to be playing Tyreek Hill. Then you got Cooper Kupp, who's the least expensive of those elite three. Adams is going to be owned. Absolutely, Adams is going to be owned. Devonte Adams will always be owned. I just really don't think he's going to be, up in the 15 to 20 to 25% range. And against the football team, the worst secondary in the league, he has the opportunity to completely break the slate. He could have 40 points this week. If Devonte Adams gets 40 points, he's like 12% owned. It's like you're just counting your money. You're counting your doubloons. So I'm all in on him. My last guy that I'm super targeting this week is Hollywood Brown. Hollywood Brown. I've talked about this on like every show I've done, but his role has not really changed with Bateman coming in. Bateman came in and took the Watkins role. Watkins was already dead even in targets with Hollywood Brown, but people just didn't realize because he's dusty Sammy Watkins and he wasn't scoring touchdowns. But they were already dead even in targets. What made Hollywood Brown so much more enticing is that he got a lot of end zone targets, and specifically he got a lot of deep targets, right? He was not going to convert deep against the Chargers. The Chargers defense, the entire identity of their defense is stopping deep passing plays. So this game, I think if it had happened with Watkins there instead of Bateman, would have gone the exact same way, and everyone would have just written it off. But because Bateman was there instead of Watkins, people were more inclined to believe that there might be a sea change. Then they see Hollywood have a down game. They see Bateman out-target him. People are down on Hollywood. He's in that same mid-range wide receivers where he's going to have a lot of people drawing ownership away from him. I'm going to be very, very overweight on Hollywood Brown. Those are some of the plays that I'm most jacked up about this week. When we come back, I'm going to give you a sneaky athlete to talk. And then we're going to come back. We're going to do our GPP roulette and we'll wrap. By all means, again, if you have questions, if you're just tuning in now, if you have questions, make sure to either comment on my tweet with the show. Make sure that we'll get to those, or make sure to just come on into the YouTube, get your questions in there, and then we will have that ready for you. I'll be right back. All right, here we go. The sneaky athlete of the week is none other than Comet. Comet has actually had a pretty solid role so far this year. He's been running about 80% of the routes, especially since Justin Fields has taken over. Jimmy Graham's on the COVID list. The issue is that they just haven't passed the ball at all. They are going to have to pass against the Bucs. The Bucs stop the run, and they're going to beat them by 3 touchdowns. Comet at just $3,000 provides a really nice bring back to any of your Evans, or your Godwin, or your Fournette. I'm definitely going to be down to lock in Comet. That's my sneaky athlete. Spencer in the chat with a question says, tell me what's wrong. As soon as the DFS lineup here: Kyler, Connor, CPAT, Godwin, Mooney, Ridley, RSJ, Kirk, Pats, D. So I always start with the term wrong. I don't think anything is like wrong. You can play realistically. You can play whoever you want. I think that just what you should always try to focus on is playing plays that are correlated. I don't think that Connor with Kyler is ever the greatest process in the world. It can work out, but Connor's fantasy value is pretty exclusively tied in rushing touchdowns, and Kyler's ceiling is also a function of rushing touchdowns. So I don't think it makes a ton of sense to play two guys that I think are pretty negatively correlated. If you're going to play running back with Kyler, I'd rather play Edmonds, or I would just rather play 2 of his wide receivers, or I'd rather just play Kyler plus 1, with Kirk, find a different running back to play altogether, because I think you don't need to double stack Kyler, because Kyler's best fantasy output usually is with multiple rushing touchdowns, and those aren't going to anybody else. So I think that's fine. I don't think I'm going to be playing Patterson this week, but that's actually totally fine. I mean, his ownership should be pretty low given the price increase. And then everybody else, I like the Godwin, Mooney. Yeah, Patterson and Ridley together is a little much for me. Like, I'm assuming this is a tournament lineup, by the way. If this isn't a tournament lineup, then I take back some of what I'm saying. But Patterson and Ridley together is a little rough for me. I just don't like to play 2 guys in the same team that are both actually like over 6,000 without playing their quarterback. It's going to be really hard, I think, for both those guys to get there, and especially for both those guys to get there. If they do, then I want Matt Ryan too in that lineup, right? So those would be the 2 things I would say. I would say I would avoid playing the 2 Falcons together without Ryan. I would avoid Kyler and Connor together, and then I would probably want to play a bring back. If I'm playing this Arizona game, I'd probably want to play Brandon Cooks in there somehow. Yeah, so what if it was Matt Ryan instead? Yeah, so I think if you put in Matt Ryan in this lineup, then now I like this lineup a lot. And then I would, then you can do whatever you want with the rest. I'd probably want to get a Dolphin in there somehow. So I don't know, maybe turn like Christian Kirk into Jalen Waddle or something, and then you can figure out what to do with the extra savings, right? Then you can maybe you can spend up from Connor or Patterson. Yeah, that's the big thing for me. I don't really have strong takes, on specific players or plays. Like, will I be playing Cordell Patterson this week? Probably not. Do I think that you just straight up can't play Cordell Patterson? No. But I think that, you should make Cordell Patterson make sense in the context of the lineup, right? So if you're going to play Patterson, am I going to play Patterson as just a one-off? I probably wouldn't. But I think he makes more sense if he's paired with a Dolphin. I think he makes more sense if he's part of a Matt Ryan stack. And so, as you mentioned, if you play Matt Ryan instead, then I like Patterson and Ridley together a lot more. Absolutely. All right. When we return, we're going to do our little GPP roulette. So Spencer, Andrew, I know you've been in here. If anybody else joins, feel free to help out. Tom, you can feel free to help out as well. I'm going to spin the wheel. If anyone does not know the way the GPP roulette works, basically we're going to spin a wheel. Lineup's going to tell us what to do. We're going to have to make a lineup on the spot from there, and I will enter it, and I will actually play it. Looking forward to seeing you when we return in just a second. All right. Here we go. Let's get my roulette wheel, of course, in here. That was my bad there on the screen share. I was a little bit slow on the draw there. Well, I'll explain how we do this as I get this all set up. So, way this all works is I spin a roulette wheel from a simulator. We spin it twice. Each of the numbers on this wheel has a player assigned in my handy little book right here. Okay. Then I'm going to go in, I'm going to enter in whatever players the wheel tells me that I have to into a lineup. And then we're going to try and build a lineup from there. And we're going to use the concepts we've been talking about. So trying to find lineups that make sense from an ownership perspective, from a correlation perspective. So for example, sometimes we've spun the wheel and we've gotten these super, super chalky plays where, okay, for instance, if I spun the wheel this week and I get Darrell Henderson and we get, Derrick Henry, it's like, okay, well, now we have to get really different in the rest of our lineup. If we get some total rando, then we can kind of do whatever we want. And we're going to try and build a stack, that makes sense with the correlation. So the way I do this, I just scroll through Twitter about half an hour before I jump on the show. And I jot down the first 36 names I see of players that are playing on this slate, and I assign each a number. So without any further ado, let's spin that wheel. 18. First is 18, and that is Myles Gaskin. Myles Gaskin, coming off a performance in which he barely played, but in a high over-under game, he's got an opportunity against Atlanta that are pretty bad against pass catching backs. So I'm kind of into it. All right, let's spin again. Hoping for Ridley would be a nice pair. Well, 27. Shout out to Taylor Cornell. 27 is Joe Burrow. All right. So let's get this going here. Let's get back, and we're going to get over into our DraftKings tab. All right, we got Joe Burrow now all of a sudden, and we got Myles Gaskin locked in atop this lineup. So what are we going to do? Well, this is kind of nice. The decision's made for us in a sense. We get a quarterback. So we got Joe Burrow. I'll tell you what, we're definitely playing a Bengal, right? So we get to decide between Jamar Chase, between T. Higgins, Tyler Boyd, and I get to use that little Hollywood Brown bring back play that I really wanted to do. So we're gonna lock in Brown. And what Bengals wide receiver should we play here? Do we want to do Higgins? Do we want to do Boyd? I mean, we don't want to do Boyd. Do we want to do Chase? Give me something, Tom. Give me something, Spencer. Give me something, Andrew. Whoever. Feel free. You let me know what Bengals wide receiver you want in this lineup, and we'll be happy to make that happen. Otherwise, let's focus on the rest of this lineup. The nice thing is, all these guys are very, very affordable, right? All these guys are very, very affordable. Higgins for the win. All right. So let's log in T. Higgins. Now we got ourselves a nice affordable lineup. We have over 5,600 remaining. I don't even have a defense yet, so I'm just going to put in Eagles as our placeholder. 6,400. Right now we have a really, really unique stack because Burrow. I expect Burrow to be 2% owned. Higgins is probably going to be pretty popular this week, but not prohibitively so. And then Brown, kind of the same realm. And Gaskin's going to be super under owned. So I'm going to go ahead. I'm just going to play the big dog because I don't see a good reason why not. I'm going to lock in Derrick Henry in this lineup. 54-33 remaining. I think we could actually even push this. It's an option. Kelsey's possible, or we could spend up more at wide receiver. I think I like the non-Kelsey option just because it allows us to get another, two multiple good wide receivers. So I'm going to put in Seals Jones because I think, again, we can be pretty chalky with the rest of what we do. This gives us 6,300, a whopping 6,300 to work with for the rest of our salary plays. A lot of flexibility here. I could put in Ridley and Cooks. We have Gaskin, so I'd like to play Ridley with Gaskin, and that gives us $6,000 for our last spot. I'm going to go ahead and put in Brandon Cooks in this last spot here in our lineup. And certainly you could put Swift there as well. I like to do 2 running back lineups. I prefer 2 running back lineups, but definitely I think it's fair to do 3. And also you get flexibility there with Cooks or with Swift where they play at 325. You have the opportunity to late swap. So that's our GPP Roulette lineup this week. Joe Burrow, Myles Gaskin, Derrick Henry, Marquise Brown, T. Higgins, Calvin Ridley, Ricky Seals Jones, Brandon Cooks, and the Eagles defense It has been a fun one today. It's been great talk with you folks. Thanks for the folks that came in the chat that were interacting. Thanks to everybody who ends up listening to this later, viewing it later on. Good luck with your DFS lineups, your regular lineups, with everything on Sunday. And I will be back next week with a full slate. I'll be back on Wednesday, of course, for Fantasy Intervention with Chase and Shane. On Friday for the Full Tilt Dynasty podcast with Billy and Tom. And of course, on Saturday back here with No Free Squares. You can find me on Twitter, FF_RTDB, and you can find my written work on playerprofiler.com. Have a fantastic rest of your weekend. Bye.